Hi everybody, welcome to another Derek Does. Today, we're going to do this. Hi, welcome back to another Derek Does. If you're new here, please subscribe, like, comment, and you're going to really like a lot of the stuff I have going on. But today, what we're going to be doing is this. And this is the Stetson Open-Road. I don't want to say fedora, but I also don't want to say cowboy hat. It's a hat. It's kind of a mix between the two. You've seen this hat countless times in movies and everything. LBJ, the president, was never outside without this hat. It's called the cattleman's, well, they call it a cattleman's crease. And you can see there, it's a little different than a normal fedora, which would be a seat crease right here. So it would come in and then go around. This one actually is like a cowboy hat. I'll give you you've probably seen these hats everywhere. They're pretty popular. I've had this one for quite a few years. I've had a few of these over the years. I've had different degrees of them too. And when I say degrees, I'll get into that. This is a 3X Stetson. It's probably from the 60s, I would guess. I don't think it's from the 70s. I think it's from the 60s. I had a deluxe version, and I sold that one because I didn't need two cattleman hats, and that was actually a better hat than this one. But this was kind of my beater hat. You know, when I'm just going out mowing the yard or just outside, a hat that I don't care if it gets some damage, not damage, but you know, some abuse. I wear my hats. I use everything, all my vintage stuff I actually use. I don't ever display it as unless it's an actual thing to display, I actually wear it. But this is the Stetson, what is called the Open-Road. They make a lot of hats. I know you know Stetson, but this is a real popular model. You've probably seen it, but if you never knew what it was and you've seen it, then this is what it is. It's the Open-Road. It came out in 1937, and originally was in just, there was no fixture to this. So it was just round, and whoever would buy it, and then you would crease it to however you like it. And then in 48, they came out with the cattleman style of this, which is actually like two things and then this middle piece. Like I've had actually this one's, I've actually turned it into like a normal fedora where I just had a C crease here for a while, because you can steam these and mess with them and you can change them and shape them as you want. But I put it back to where originally it was as the cattleman, because I kind of like it now. At first I didn't, because I thought it was a little too Western, but now that I live in Colorado, it's not quite as Western, I guess. And it's not really a cowboy hat, because it doesn't have this, it doesn't come up like a cowboy hat. It's the Open-Road. But Stetson still makes this hat. They've been making this hat. I would say this hat is probably one of their huge sellers. I don't know that for sure. But I would say that, you know, they've been selling the same hat, and they sell a lot of versions of this now. I was on the Stetson website, and it comes in a pure beaver, which is, I think they want like $800 for it or something like that, which is crazy. This is a 3X. I think they have a 6X or a 5X. Now, when you see a hat that has 3X, 5X, 10X, it's the amount of rabbit felt to beaver fur, and that's what these hats are. These hats are beaver and rabbit, and it's a felt that they put together, kind of like any felt, and they make the hats, they make the molds, and then they form the hats. And you can get online and you can see some great videos of, you know, how they actually make hats, which is quite fascinating and really fun. But there is no standard. So like when Stetson say it's 3X, that's just something they came up with. When any other hat manufacturers say they're 3X, it doesn't mean that 3X and that 3X are exactly the same. They could have more rabbit, they could have less rabbit, they could have more beaver, they could have less beaver. Now when it comes to Stetson, Stetson's kind of like the gold standard, I think, when it comes to particularly hats, this sort of hat. So if they say it's 3X, it's the amount of beaver to rabbit. So it's, I think technically what it is, it's 3 times more beaver fur than rabbit fur. So if you had a 50-50, I think that's what they're trying to get across. So like when you get to 100X, That means it's pure, and you'll see Stetson actually made a lot of hats, what they would call, I think they called it a $100 hat or something like that. Back in the day, it was $100, where you get a hat like this back in the day probably for 20 bucks or something like that, or $10. Today they're not that, but you know, when it was new, it was probably about that. And then they had a $100 hat, and that meant it was pure beaver. And those hats go for a lot of money. They even came in a fancy hard case because, you know, you had spent so much money on a hat, which is kind of crazy at that time period. Today, you can't even get into one of these for $100. It's just how it is. You can find them used maybe, but you can't buy a new one. But I'll take this off and I'll show you just, again, this one isn't perfect. It's not mint, because none of my stuff is mint because I use it. But I'll show you, and I'll show you like what to look for and stuff like that. If you ever like at a thrift store or at an estate sale, or you're going through your grandfather's closet and you see a hat like this, you can pull it out and go, oh my gosh, that's a Open-Road. I know exactly what it is because I saw it on Derek Does. So let's take a look, and I'll do some close-ups of the actual hat so you can kind of take a look at it and see what it's all about. Because I know you probably heard Open-Road and Stetson, and you've seen this hat, and you'll see. All right, well, here it is on my handy-dandy hat maker's mannequin head. As you can see, it's not perfect by any means, but that's kind of like how I like it. It's got some nice beat-upness to it. But that's what, even a moth nip right there. That's what they call a moth nip. There's two of them there. Not too bad. You can see where I had originally had a C crown and has brought it back a little bit. Doesn't quite fit on the mannequin head, but hopefully it won't fall off. Just give you an idea. So it's like this tawny color. So there's even a moth nip there too. But it's got just a small little ribbon, nothing big, because you're not showing off with this hat like a fedora where you'd have a fancy, like almost a 2-inch gross grain ribbon going around. This just has a little, maybe like a 1/2 inch at that most. And then also has an edge all the way around it. So it's not like a cowboy hat doesn't have that. Usually a cowboy hat's just cut felt. And now on the inside, here you can see it's got the Stetson with the 3X with the gold, and it's a leather band, 3X. This one actually doesn't have, usually they might have a gentleman that owned it before you do. They'll have like the initials, or they'll have the place that was purchased. This one doesn't though. Normally they do. Now one thing, here I'll put this down on the ground so you can see it. So it's got a white silk lining in it, and the little bow where the leather hat band comes together, and that's usually to kind of tell you that's the back of the hat, so you know. Now if you ever find a hat like this where you don't see the size tag, this is a 7 3/8 because I know that. If you tip back the leather, you will find information from the manufacturer as they're making it. So this one is actually stamped there. You can see 3953.94. I don't know what that stands for. That might have been just the stamp that was actually on the actual leather when they bought it from the person or the place that did the tanning, or it could be from Stetson itself. Obviously somebody wrote something there, a 3/8, because I know this is a 7 3/8, so that's kind of interesting. The 3/8 was probably from the factory person, so you can actually see there. So it's a 7 3/8 long oval. It's just been pushed down, so it doesn't, because these will break off over time, and so it's just pushed down so it doesn't fall apart. And it's even this has a little stamp on it too from the factory. Hats come in a long oval or just a 7 3/8. A long oval is more like if you have a football more head than a round head. And I have more of a football head than a round head. So a long oval for me, 7 3/8 is like my perfect size when it comes to hats. But you can see here they actually put 3/8 on the inside. So probably there's a pile of these and it said 3/8 to do it. Now on this side, sometimes if the hat's a little newer, they'll actually have a paper tag on the inside here. This hat actually might be a little older. This hat might be 50s. If you ever see the paper tag, that's older. Later on, they went with like a fabric tag. And then they started doing millimeters and centimeters, metric, for just so they could sell it everywhere. But whenever you see the older one like that, this is an older hat. This might be 50s actually, or late 50s, early 60s. But they would also sometimes have a paper tag in here, and it would say Open-Road, and give you other information of the color and that sort of thing. And sometimes they will even have the price. This one doesn't have any of that though. But if you look at the my other fedora video, you can kind of see some of those that sometimes they give you the price, like it was $8 or something like that. And this is probably what this hat was. It was about 10 bucks, like I said, when it was new. You can see that it's not perfect, and I love that about this hat. But this is the Open-Road. It doesn't actually say Open-Road, or it doesn't anymore. Sometimes they're even stamped Open-Road, but this is an Open-Road. It might be a newer one where they actually stamp it on there. But this is the Open-Road from Stetson. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Derek Does, all about the Stetson Open-Road. Again, this is a vintage. I'm thinking it's from the 60s. I don't know if there's an exact way to tell. Obviously, the size tag has changed over the years, so you can tell that. And it doesn't have a trolley cord, which I don't think they actually did come with trolley cords, because it wasn't a gentleman's hat. It was a rancher's hat. It was a farmer's hat. It was that sort of hat. And they wouldn't obviously be jumping on trolleys and even needing a trolley cord. But if you watch my old video on vintage fedoras, you'll check that one out, because that's kind of fun, because you'll actually get to learn about vintage fedoras besides just the Open-Road. Anyway, I'm going to put a link below for this. Hopefully I'll find it, and then if you're interested in this hat or a similar hat, maybe you can click on it and maybe get one for yourself. Who knows? Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next Derek Does.